Hey everybody, Chris here again. Just wanted to do another review on a product that I use every day that's really important to me. You know, I try to keep it simple. You know, I don't have a ton of stuff, just a few things that really work for me. And so today I wanted to talk about my go-to watch on 95% of days is the Garmin Epix. This is the Gen 2, I believe it's called. They recently came out with the Epix Pro, but this is the one I've had for the past couple years. It was the most recent refresh from Garmin on this model up until about a month ago when they released the Epix Pro. I wanted to make this video for anybody who might be interested in the Garmin lineup, who might be considering a sports or smartwatch combo, and kind of give you my 2 cents on it. For those who have the Epix Gen 2, also wanted to discuss whether it would be worth upgrading to the new Epix Pro. Maybe you have a Garmin Fenix, you want to know if you should come over to the bright side of the Epix lineup. Just a little background, I kind of came late to the watch game. I didn't really start wearing watches on a daily basis up until I was in graduate school about 15 years ago. Then it just kind of became part of my wardrobe and I've worn a watch ever since. I'm particular to these type of watches, these sports fitness trackers, and sort of the tactical aesthetic that they bring. I like that look. But for dressier occasions or anytime I want to go a little fancier, I do love a good mechanical dive watch. Just the precision engineering is wonderful. It's something that on so many levels from a design and engineering perspective really kind of hits home for me. So I'll do a review on several of the mechanical dive watches that I own and are in my rotation, but today it's all about the Garmin Epix Gen 2. And I know that name is a little confusing. The Gen 2 comes about because Garmin had an Epix watch for a long time. The Gen 2 brought in an AMOLED display. So bottom line, I think the Garmin Epix Gen 2 and Epix Pro are some of the best sports fitness watches on the market. They have more features than you can possibly ever use. I think 90% of users probably only use 10% of the features on it, which is fine. For me, selecting a watch comes down to its capability, but also its look and its comfort. Wearing it on a daily basis, also the practicality of it and its battery life, all of those factors are how I decide, what's gonna go on my wrist. In the past decade or so, I've used the Garmin Fenix. I've had an Apple Watch for a short time. It didn't work out for me, mostly due to its short battery life and just its lack of durability. I think I scratched the crystal face on it within 6 hours of getting it out of the box, and so I knew right then and there it wasn't gonna work for me. The Fenix was great, but 2 years ago I went to the Epix Gen 2, mostly for the AMOLED screen. So that's the big difference between the Fenix lineup from Garmin and the Epix lineup is the screen. That AMOLED display on the Epix is wonderful. It is extremely easy to read, even in direct sunlight. It does consume slightly more battery power, so if you are someone who is off the grid without charging capability for 30 or 40 days, the Fenix with its solar recharging capability might be a better bet, but for the vast majority of people, the Epix Gen 2 I think is the perfect combination of battery life plus functionality. So Garmin claims on this watch to get about 16 days of battery life in smartwatch mode. I get about 7 to 10 days based on how long my workouts are. So this watch tracks all of my fitness, all my workouts, all my activities. And so if I'm on a 2.5 hour run, using GPS, that's gonna eat it up. Same thing with hikes, with bike rides. I'm doing something like that every single day. And so it definitely decreases my overall battery life. But I feel like 7 to 10 days is plenty. It's so nice not to have to bring chargers with me on weekend trips. I can literally charge it up, I put it on, I don't take it off for 7 to 10 days, and it does everything with me. It's in the shower, I'm not worried about it. It's getting in the salt water, of course I rinse it off after that. But it fits my lifestyle extremely well, and at the same time I think complements sort of like the casual outdoorsy look that I tend to dress with. These watches have a myriad of built-in activity tracking modes, sport modes, different sensors. You've got heart rate, pulse oximetry, barometers, compasses, altimeters. You've got everything. The feature list is really too long to go over here. You can check a Garmin website, see what it is. Chances are if there's a sport that you do, it has a mode to track it. If not, you can build custom activity trackers with metrics that are important to you. Within each activity, it has several data screens that you can customize so that the information that you want to know during that activity is front and center. So for me, it's typically heart rate. I've been going down a big kick of trying to stay in zone 2 for the majority of my cardiovascular work. I've been reading this book by Peter Attia called Outlive, and it's just fascinating to kind of nerd out on the importance of zone 2 training and how some of the best endurance athletes in the world use it. And so it's something I can get into in another video. If people are interested, please let me know in the comments. But as a healthcare provider, I've really been nerding out on this. And that's what I'm using this watch for the majority of time in workouts, is just to make sure that I'm staying in that really narrow, zone 2 range, which for runs is honestly very difficult. I almost naturally, end up pushing harder and higher on the heart rate zones. So the watch is set up to remind me to, hey, like slow down, even walk if I have to maintain, that desired exertion level. When I bought my watch, the Epix Gen 2 only came in one size, and that was 47 millimeters. I'm not a big guy, I'm about 5'6". I would say my arms are proportional to my height. So you can see how big that watch looks on me. They're big watches. There's no getting around that. They definitely make a statement. I think it makes a really good athletic, sort of outdoorsy statement, which is what I like. But if you're somebody who's in business suits all the time, this probably isn't what you're wearing to the office. Maybe it's just a weekend watch or something you put on after work. It does sit up pretty tall. I'm not sure the exact dimensions. I didn't bring calipers with me here, but it's a struggle sometimes with like a long sleeve button down shirt or a jacket. I have to fight the cuff to get it over. I'm just used to doing that. Not a deal breaker for me, but I think if you're coming from really slim watches, even an Apple Watch where the bezel is smooth and things slide over it easier, this could get a bit annoying. But if I'm wearing, some of my dress shirts that have narrower cuffs, those are probably occasions where I'm wearing one of my dive watches anyway, and it slides over much easier. So keep in mind, these are big watches. They look big. If you're a smaller person, it's something you're gonna have to get used to. They are now available in both the Epix Gen 2 and Epix Pro lineup in 41 millimeter, 47 millimeter, and I believe 51 millimeter. I have to check on that, but there are 3 size ranges. So it's worth checking out. And at least now you have options, especially for women who might have smaller wrists and they don't want a gigantic watch on there. The smaller 41, 42 millimeter size is probably the way to go. Kind of getting into the reasons I choose this watch over all the other options out there. I mean, I've touched on it already throughout this video, but number one, I'd say are looks. It looks awesome. It makes me look more fit than I really am, maybe more outdoorsy than I really am. But I like the look of it. It fits my lifestyle. Some of the small details on the watch, on the main action button, the little red surround around the bezel of that button. It's subtle, but it has enough detail that when I'm looking at it, it matters to me. The screen on this watch is great, super readable, customizable. The colors are really nice. Number 2, again, I already talked about it, is the battery life. It's wonderful not to be lugging chargers everywhere and having to take it off every night and plug it in and forgetting and worrying about making it through the day. I think we all have enough devices that give us anxiety about whether they're going to last throughout the day. You're bringing extra chargers or you're finding places to top it off. This watch is not one of those things, and I really like that. The number 3 reason I love this watch is just its durability and ruggedness. I do not baby my tools, my toys. I use them. I'm not a collector of things. I'm a user of things. And this watch has, done everything with me. I've fallen down mountains. I've tripped running on treadmills. It's as embarrassing as that is, it's happened. Under cars, working on things, fixing stuff around the house. It gets banged up, beat up, and it looks as good as it did the day it came out of the box. I have a tiny scratch, very superficial scratch on the sapphire crystal. I've got a little bit of a scratch on one of the bezels, but I think it actually adds to the look of it, and you're hard pressed to really see it on here. So after 2 years of nearly everyday wear, this watch looks as good as the day I got it. And so that durability is, I think, hard to find in watches, especially smartwatches. So the Garmin gets my vote in that regard. Kind of getting into how I use this watch. I use this as a sports and fitness tracker, lifestyle tracking watch. I do not use it for its smartwatch functionality. I have notifications turned off completely. In fact, that's the same on my phone. I don't want to be having my phone buzz every time I get an email or a text message or a phone call. So I pretty much live my life on do not disturb, and my watch is the same way. Of course, anybody on my favorites list on my phone can get through, but I don't have it come through to my watch. I think we have enough like notifications and beeps and alerts going off all the time in our lives, that this was just one way I could control some of the stress in my life, was to turn it off on the watch. So outside of like the sports and fitness tracking, I have it set up to track different tide schedules for the different marinas or boat launches that I use. I use it to track my estimated VO2 max, which it's pretty accurate compared to like a real life, respiratory based VO2 measurement. So the algorithms are pretty decent, plus or minus, a point or two. I use it to track altitude when I'm out hiking. I have the barometer on there to see what the weather might be doing. I think with the weather, it's easy to just look outside and you can kind of tell. But, if you're in a mountainous area and it's overcast or it's in the evening, sometimes that data can be helpful. I don't use it, like I said, as a smartwatch. I don't use the weather functionality in here because it's always been sort of buggy. It never seems to sync really well with my phone. So let's get into the differences between the Epix Gen 2 and the Epix Pro. Epix Pro does add a flashlight in the front and a new heart rate sensor, a wrist-based heart rate sensor. The flashlight is actually a pretty interesting feature. I might use that because I find that I'm going to the flashlight on my cell phone at least once a day. Other than that, no changes to the watch itself. It comes in black and white typically. They may have a titanium option, they used to at least. All different options on watch straps that you have to order separately, and I think they're around $50 a strap. So it's not cheap, but it's a way you can personalize it a little bit and make it your own. The heart rate sensor is interesting to me. That's mainly how I use this watch. Wrist-based heart rate sensors are notoriously inaccurate depending on the activity you're doing. So for me, I'm usually wearing a chest strap if I want really accurate data. It's not the most comfortable thing, but it fluctuates much less than if I'm relying on the built-in heart rate monitor. So I'd be interested to see with the new Epix Pro how accurate that new sensor really is. On the software side of the watch, Garmin is pretty good about trickling down the new features to their older models. So the Epix Gen 2 that I have gets all of the new features except for something called Hill Score and Endurance Score, which basically tells you how good you are at running up hills and how long you can sustain, a high intensity effort on the endurance score side of things. Intuitively, I kind of know that already, so I don't feel like those are huge advantages. So will I be upgrading from the Epix Gen 2 to the new Epix Pro? Absolutely not. The Epix Gen 2 does everything I need. This couple, feature gains, the new sensor, the flashlight are just not enough for me to justify a $1,000 purchase. These watches aren't cheap, but they're fantastic. So I'll be sticking with this at least for another iteration. We'll see what the next year or two brings in terms of features from Garmin. But for now, I'm gonna stick with my Epix Gen 2. I don't feel a need to upgrade. It's a perfect complement in my quiver to my mechanical dive watches, and it is the watch that gets the most wrist time for me. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them. I hope this was helpful if you're on the fence of what smartwatch to get or fitness watch. I wholeheartedly recommend the Epix series from Garmin. You can't go wrong. If I was buying one and I didn't have the Epix Gen 2 at the time, I would go with the Epix Pro. Even though you can get the Gen 2 at a $100, a couple $100 discount, I'd probably go with the newer model just to get the newer sensors. But I'll be sticking with my tried and true. I'll be putting more scratches on the bezel, more scratches on the face, and loving every minute of it. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.